Hey everybody, Nomalanga, Mhlauli-Moses here with the mochamoguls.com. I'm here with personal finance expert, Dr. John Beckem. How are you doing today, JB?
I'm doing excellent. How are you doing, Noma?
I'm doing great. So interesting topic here. I'm going to ask you, as I always do, my audience to bear with me if I have background noises. I'm a full-time mom as well as a full-time businesswoman. But jumping into our topic here is a story that's floating around, and I thought it would be great to discuss it with you from a personal finance expert's perspective. So the singer Jill Scott is getting divorced, and the main facts as far as a financial conversation goes is that she had a prenup. Now she has a messy divorce. Being a celebrity and a singer and all that, she was making significantly much more money than her husband, and now is all a mess. So you know of Jill Scott, and mind you, this marriage only lasted 15 months. So
Oh,
what are
wow.
your initial thoughts hearing this story?
Well, first of all, I'm very sad whenever I hear about a marriage, coming to an end and ending in divorce. No matter whether it's someone I personally know, or whether it's a celebrity or just, someone that you hear about in passing. Anytime that there's a union that has taken place in holy matrimony, to see it kind of broken apart, it's very sad. And then when you start to interject finances into the equation as well, it usually make the situation a lot messy, as well as when you include children. So, children and finances tend to make divorces even more messier than what they have to be. And the only people who make it, who gets rich are the lawyers.
Right. So I thought it was very important for me to talk to you about this because the conversation, part of the conversation is around this prenup thing. So for me, being a person who talks a lot about marriage and my own beliefs that marriage is a very big part of building generational wealth and generational success. I wanted to hear what you thought about a prenup. First of all, do you think it was wise for her to get a prenup? Because she says she has a prenup and she's asking the judge to enforce it.
Well, absolutely. So I'm in support of prenups. I think prenups can be a very usable tool. It can be a tool that that it becomes beneficial and advantageous in situations like this. To me, we have to take a look at the society in which we live in. So, in theory, everyone wants the world where, you might have heard the fairy tale stories growing up as a kid, where someone marries the love of their life and they go on to live happily ever after, and that's it. But
Right.
in the reality of our current, society, at least in the United States, divorces are over 50%. Divorce rate. So a lot of marriages have a 50-50 chance of whether they're going to make it or not make it. And in a society where people are so money hungry, you can have persons who find interest in another or want to get married to another for the sole purpose of financial gain,
Right.
having access to money, being able to live that lifestyle. And so you hear about these circumstances where people are taken advantage of, where one person genuinely loves someone and the other person just, hey, they in it for the money. I mean, we even have terms called gold diggers, that was created specifically for these case scenarios. So to me, a prenup is a way of leveling the playing field and protecting your assets. I'm always going to be for protecting your assets.
Absolutely.
Let me give you a case scenario.
Mm-hmm.
So if we look at a ball player, and I'm just using this as one example, there are many.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at a ball player who's been playing a sport, and let's say football, since they were 3 years old, dealing with, Pop Warner League or whatever. And since 3 years old, they had to go out after school and do all the practices. They got injured and they still had to play through the injuries. They had to go through recovery for injuries. Sometimes they just learn how to play through the pain. They're getting hit. They're taking all of these potential injuries. They're not going out with their friends, when people were doing dates or going on trips because they got practice or they got games. So they're sacrificing a lot of their time. Now, this person, because of all their hard work, they go to college, they playing ball. And again, maybe they don't get opportunity to engage in the social life, the fraternities and the sororities or what have you. And they really buckling down because sports is their life. And while everyone else is having a social life, they're, either recovering from an injury or practicing or preparing for the next match. Then they make it onto a professional level, in our case, the NFL. And they're getting hit. And again, they got all these practices. They got, they put in their body, they do training and different cases. And they've been doing this since they were 3. And here they are now 35. They're multi-millionaire because of their salaries in the NFL. And here comes a person, in this case, and we're going to say a woman because we're talking about the NFL that only has male players.
Right.
So say this person is 35 years old. He's a multi-millionaire through hard work. And now at 35, decides to get married. And they marry this woman, that comes from very meager means. Let's say their family is not wealthy. Let's say they are, at the social economic status on the poverty end or just about poverty or a little bit above poverty. And after being married for, a year, they want to get a divorce. And now this person says, well, I was poor when you met me. I brought nothing to it. But since you have gone through all the sacrifices, going through all the injuries, the practices, the games, the studying, the of doing without so that you can put everything into your craft of football, now I want half of all your multi-millions. In what world is that equitable, right? So, I mean, so a prenup, to me, this is one example where prenup could be advantageous to protect this ball player who may be making decisions based upon their emotional status of their heart and not thinking financially. And here's this woman be like, hey, cha-ching, I've hit payday. I'm going to suffer through this for a year, and then I want half of everything that you've accumulated from the age of 3 to 35. And they only been with you 12 months. Only thing they brought with them was their clothes. And even though they brought their clothes, they threw it out because now they want Prada and Gucci. And they should get half. They should get half of what you have. I mean, come on.
Okay, so
you you laughing because it even sounds ridiculous to you.
No. So yes, I am laughing because when you put it that way, and for the record, I am vehemently against prenups. When you put it that way, I might find myself jumping on the prenup bandwagon or whatever you want to call it. But I want to offer a different perspective, and in as much as this young man has started this process of what he's doing, which, mind you, is a very unique situation or circumstance, he's acquired all these things. I'm in agreement with you. He really put a lot into it, and so on and so on. One of the things that stood out to me is that you say he picked a woman from meager means and brings nothing to the table. So that's one thing, and I'll come back to it. But to say, to really state why I disagree with a prenup is I believe that a prenup in essence is a plan for failure. So you're going into marriage with already considering the idea that it will or can fail, which, and I know this makes me specifically unique. When I walked into my marriage, and I believe that that's how people should walk into marriage, I don't consider divorce as an option. And I believe that a lot of times when people get divorced and they say the typical irreconcilable differences, it's usually rubbish. The differences are fixable. They are just not willing, and maybe just can't or won't or whatever it is. But it's usually because on some level they walked into that process already considering that it could end. So they were planning for it to end. They had that thought working in the background all along, and that's something for me that I just don't do. And I don't want that to be something that I would pass on to my children, to have that thought. And I come from a family where marriages have been going on for generations. So that's just something that we say is not our way. And you actually approach marriage in a much, much different way when you think about divorce not being an option. Your toolbox is much, much bigger. Your resources, your support, your encouragement when you're in a marriage are drastically different than when you have that mindset that this might end, so I better prepare. I better have this paper to make sure that if it goes down, which it probably will, I'm okay. And again, one of those things is that we look at assets only from a monetary perspective, but really having a family that's solid and has been solid for generations is, maybe you can't call it an asset, but it's something certainly very valuable, which then takes me back to the point that I tabled. So I'm sorry, you want to say something?
Yeah, so let me interject here, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I want to hang out on a statement that you made that you are opposed to prenup because it gives the inference that there's a possibility that this marriage can or will fail. And so I kind of want to hang out there for a second, right?
Sure.
And so let me ask you a personal question, right?
Okay, I'm not sure I'll answer, but sure.
do you drive an automobile?
I do.
Do you have car insurance on that automobile that you drive?
Absolutely.
So why do you have car insurance?
And because it's required by the law.
Okay, but if it was not required by the law, would you or would you not have car insurance?
Okay, this is, again, one of the things that makes me unique. I wouldn't have it.
Okay, so all right, so that means that if you bought a brand new car at $30,000-$40,000, that you would not insure it. Right.
Let's put it on the table that I drive. My car's 10 years old, and I'm probably paying more in car insurance than it's worth. But go ahead.
Okay, but we got it. We can't look at it as spots. We can't look at specific examples. We have to look at it holistically.
Absolutely.
In order for something to be true or not, or to apply, right?
Right, and I'll stop being obtuse.
Yeah. So let's not talk about your personal car, but let's say that, you saved up and you bought this $40,000 car that you really wanted. You paid cash for it. It's $40,000. Would you insure it or would you not insure it?
I mean, of course I would insure it because yes, I would insure it.
Right. Just like most people. So let me ask you a separate question. All right. So you get ready to do a cruise and you get ready to go on a boat, and this boat is crossing the Pacific Ocean or the Atlantic Ocean. Do you want that boat, that cruise ship, to have life jackets and or smaller boats? Right?
Yes, I agree with you, and I predict that whatever example you come up with, I'll agree with it. But this is what's called a false equivalency.
Right. But let me finish here. Right?
Yes.
So people. Let me ask you one more question. When you get into the automobile, do you put a safety belt on?
I absolutely do.
Right? Do you require your children or children that might be riding with you to be buckled up in the seatbelt?
Absolutely.
All right. So if you look at these three examples, and I can continue on with a myriad of more.
And
right?
I probably agree with most of them.
Right. So if you look at these three examples, a person is going to have car insurance on their brand new spanking car because of the possibility that it can or will perhaps be in an accident. They're not planning for their car to be in an accident. Nobody nobody buys a brand new car and then say, "Oh, let me go look for an accident." No. Likewise, you don't get on a cruise ship and say, "Wow, I'm getting on this cruise ship because I want it to go down like the Titanic." No. So you're looking at, in the possibility that this cruise ship does go down, I know where the life jackets are at. I know where the safety wraps are at. Likewise, when you get in the car and you make your loved ones that you cherish and care about put on a seatbelt, I don't believe that any mother or father or person driving the car has an intention, if they're in their right mind, to go run into the next brick wall. But they're saying that if the unlikely event that there's a catastrophe or accident, I am well prepared for it. So
Absolutely.
likewise, I think what I'm doing is I'm speaking against the ideal or the school of thought that if someone has a prenup, they're planning for their marriage to fail. No, that's not the case. So just like a person has car insurance, just like a person has a life jacket on or a raft, just like a person put a safety belt on, they're not planning for an accident because they have these precautions. But they live in a world that they know that these things happen. And if it happens, they want to be prepared for it. They want to be made whole. So when you look at, we live in a society, where anyone can go look the statistics up, that our marriage divorce rate is over 50%, then that says that I live in a reality that divorce, even though I'm not planning for it, even though I don't wish it or want it, it is a possibility in our society. So therefore, I want to plan for it in the event that it happens. I'm not looking for it. I'm not looking for an accident. I'm not looking for my cruise ship to go down. I'm not looking for any of these things to happen. But in the event that it happens, I'm prepared for it. It's no different than financially. Why do we have so many diversity when I talk about finances? I talk about making sure you got things put up for retirement, making sure you have a savings account, making sure you have an emergency account, making sure you have your investments in place, making sure you have life insurances and different things in place. Why? You're not planning for any of those things to fail, but in the event that something happens, you are well prepared to be able to weather the storm. It is no different than the same analogy, concepts, and principles being applied to a prenup.
Right. I listen, I'm not just trying to argue for the sake of arguing. So you're making some very valid points. Let
me give you one more example, right? So we talked about the athlete. So now let me bring it down to, okay, we're not going to talk about multi-million-dollar athletes. Let's talk about a business person, right? Because a business person, and since in my last example, I use a male athlete. Now I'm going to talk about a business woman, right? Because I want to show
Jill
that,
Scott,
since
that's what started the conversation. Talk about Jill Scott.
Right,
she started out, with a talent and all that.
We're gonna come back to Jill Scott, right? Let's put this on hold. Let me get the super stirring, right? So let me cut up the tomatoes and the onions and get my stew boiling before we put in the meat, right?
Okay, sure.
So here is a woman that maybe did not go to college because she wanted to pursue her dreams of having her own business. So she worked three, four jobs, worked, nighttime, work jobs to save up money so she could have capital to start her company. Now she finally get her company on successfully started, and say it run into some hard times. And because of the hard times, she had to even sleep in her car. Now I know this has been a true story for both Tyler Perry and for the comedian Steve Harvey. Okay. Both cases, Steve Harvey and Tyler Perry at one particular time were sleeping in their cars. So think about this businesswoman that her company fell on hard times, but she didn't want to give up her dream. She did not want her company to fail. So she even sacrificed to sleep in her car. And maybe instead of eating every single day, she was trying to eat every other day. So my point being is she made a lot of sacrifices for her business to get off the ground, where she
Right.
couldn't hire nobody. She wore several hats. You know,
Mm-hmm.
when her girlfriends were looking for mates or husbands or whatever, she didn't. She was married to her business. She sacrificed having kids, you know, because of her business.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you fast forward 15, 20 years. Again, let's say this woman is 35, 40 years old. Let's say she's 40 years old. She has a very successful multi-business. She's now ready to settle down in life as far as marriage and possibility of children, whether she want to birth some children or adopt some children. And she marries this stunning, handsome young man, and the marriage only lasts 6 months. And now this guy gonna say, well, I want half of your business.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I come with the question, this woman has sacrificed her time. She has where was he at when she was sleeping in the car? Where was he at when she was not even eating every day but rationing out her food to keep her dream alive? Where was he at when she had to wear multiple hats, you know, and sacrifice all these different things? And now because he said I do and they were together for 6 months, he should get half her business? I don't think so.
Okay, so can we agree that the baseball, or was it a NFL player, whatever the sports person was, is a very, very extreme example, and so is this businesswoman? Can we agree that those are extreme examples, and that these are really very special people? Could we agree on that?
So you said so if we agree on that, then that would be saying that prenup should be reserved for certain type of people and not for others.
Nope. I'm saying we can agree. Let's start. So let's, because the purpose of you and I getting on this call is not just to argue for the sake of arguing, is to kind of inform,
Right.
maybe even educate a little bit, and you know, have something meaningful. So we have to find some kind
All
of
right.
middle point. So we can agree that
Okay.
these are special people. If you're talking about I call myself an everyday person. An everyday person, you know. I actually could sound like those people. The problem is I just didn't become a millionaire yet. But
Right.
I can look back on my life. I mean, when I was in grad school, I had 3 jobs at some point. So when you were saying that, I was nodding right along. Like, man, this was tough. This was a lot of, you know, I made
Right.
some really big investments, and I would hate for me to go through all that and then have some Johnny come lately cash in, you know. So I completely understand that process. But again, I really want to offer another perspective because it's very, very important. And again,
Well,
I
and
don't.
the
Mhm.
only reason why I brought those examples is because we start off with being Jill Scott,
With Jill
and Jill
Scott,
Scott is
yes,
a
absolutely.
celebrity.
She is a
Yeah, she is a
celebrity.
celebrity, and she's wealthy. So that's the
Right.
reason why I use those cases of some people who are wealthy.
Right. So I want to maybe take another example and say, let's turn Jill Scott. And again, we did say we're going to come back to her, but let's take Jill Scott and turn her into a man. Okay. And then,
Okay.
so a man that's successful and he's acquired a lot or whatever, you know, whether he was a singer, a businessman, or played a sport, whatever it is, he's acquired a lot in terms of financial stability, wealth, and all that, right? And he now invites a woman into his life, right? Or she invites him,
Mm-hmm.
whatever way you want to look at it. And of course, marriage. Again, for me, I'm very clear about what marriage means to me, and not just me, my children, my grandchildren, future generations, my community, my race, my culture. Do you understand? It's a very broad thing. Which I think that, again, this might make me amongst people who are a little more unique. Because when you start to only look at the union of two people through the lens of, and I realize the irony in this because I invited a personal finance expert into the conversation, but stay with me. When you only look at things through the lens of money or finances, which I'm not trying to say it's not important, it doesn't have a bearing on your success and generational wealth and building and all that. I'm not saying that. But when you only look at through that narrow scope, it does change the conversation, and I'm trying to broaden it. I don't know this man that Jill Scott married. I don't know much about him, but in my hypothetical scenario here, this man is going to investigate this woman that he's inviting into his life more thoroughly than most people do. He's going to ask himself, what is she bringing to the table? And she doesn't have to bring money. He is bringing the money. Understand? She doesn't have to bring money. Okay. It could be, that if we go back to marriage, when you look at old marriages, not nowadays. Old marriages where people used to get married because they were thinking about the success of their family. So if you have somebody from an influential family, they marry from another influential family, and they believe that they can acquire more influence, more impact, or whatever it is when their families unite. So their children get married. You look at sometimes where there was insecurity in terms of physical safety. You would join tribes, and you do this through marriage. So I look, again, maybe this makes me unique, I look at marriage still in those terms, because I think that's what's wrong nowadays, is people simplify it too much. So when you look at it that way, I don't think that somebody who has acquired that much, right, like Jill Scott or like my hypothetical person, would marry a person who has no value. The problem is they devalue that person when they only see them in terms of what they're bringing to the table financially. So if they came with nothing financially, the man, and the woman came with nothing financially, he may, if you're a traditional family, focus only on bringing in the money, and she focuses on everything else, okay? Making the home, making sure, his emotional stability, whatever. I'm not going to start listing the value of a wife, although in this day and age, again, that's something that you sometimes have to tell people because they don't realize what the value is. And then 10 years from now, he's going to have acquired a lot. Financially, right? She's going to have maybe not acquired anything financially because she's not going out and getting a job. She's not making investments. She's not doing any of these things. She's not even having to think about it much because that's his role and she has a different role. But I think what troubles me nowadays is that we're trying to devalue the role of a woman. Unless she's out there in the workplace making money, and that's what people say, she's a gold digger, she didn't bring anything to the table. But if the only thing you can bring to a table is money, then yeah, that's how the conversation's always going to go. But the thing for me is, if we go back to your example of the person who started at 3 years old, I'm going to tell you that my mother and father groomed me for success, not just financial success. Generational success, family success, just a human being, how they raised me, how I think, how I impact society, my community, my philanthropy, how I impact other people, how I raise children, how I teach them to go out into the world. That is a value that you can't put a monetary value on that. But to me, that's something very valuable that people nowadays are seeming to dismiss. So that's that.
I don't think that people are dismissing. I mean, I think you are speaking to a lot of different things, right?
Mm-hmm.
So even though you're talking about a lot of different things, the focus of the conversation is a prenup.
Mm-hmm.
A prenup only speaks to finances. So
right.
A prenup is not going to speak to all those different things because that's not what the document is for.
That's my point, though.
But
because this person gets to benefit from the things that I bring to the table that don't have any monetary value, right? But I can't quantify what I bring.
But see, even in a prenup, if you go and read a prenup document,
mm-hmm.
those things are also, they have clauses for those things. So if you got a person that says, okay, they had a net worth of $30 million before
mm-hmm.
they got married,
mm-hmm.
and now that they've been married, that net value have grown to be $40 million, as an example. So
mm-hmm.
now you can say, okay, so while you guys been together, if this person in your example was taking care of the home and taking care of other things so that you can do, their split is based upon the $10 million that was accumulated while they were together, not the $30 million that the person brought to the table before they got married. So
mm-hmm.
yes, there is a value for a husband or a wife. I'm not going to make it gender roles. So there's a value for a husband or a wife that helps a person build a success or allows a person to build a success unencumbered by different things, because there are various ways a person can bring value. And if you look at a prenup has a clause for those things. So they look at where they were at before they got married versus where they're at now since they've been married. So therefore the split comes on what was accumulated while they were married. And in my example, if a person with net worth was $30 million before they got married, and now they've been married 10 years, and the net worth is $40 million, then that other person, the spouse, have a right to the assets of the $10 million, not the $30 million that was already accumulated. So that is value. Now, the other point that you said, well, this person been called a gold digger. Well, this gold digger, the reason why this term came about is, if you look at the examples of where this person was married for 6 months or 12 months or even 18 months, and now they think that they should get half of everything that this person has accumulated for life. Well, you only been together for 6 months. Yeah, you are a gold digger, because it gives the assumption that you're trying to get something for nothing, right? That you might have some ulterior motives to even get in this marriage. Here you've been with a person for 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, and you think that you should have a right to everything they have accumulated for the last 40 years? I mean, that's ludicrous.
I mean, 40 years is extreme, but I mean, even that, to me, there's a point to be made. I mean, I personally am not a gold digger, so I don't know how that works, how the mindset works. But if we look at it from a normal woman's standpoint, one of the things that, again, these conversations don't take into account is that when you meet a 35-year-old man and you meet a 35-year-old woman, and their lives have gone more or less the same way. They both went to college. They both built up their careers or built up their businesses or whatever it is. Unfortunately, at 35, they're not on equal footing. Biology says that the man, for the next 50 years, although maybe that's, it's going to start to deteriorate at some point. For the next 50 years, he can go out and start a family and start that dream of generational wealth and blah, 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 right? And actually, and do it successfully. It's been done. Okay. A woman at 35 has like a loud ticking time bomb going on. Or 40 if you want to go there, or 45, whatever it is. At 45, a man's even better. He's probably more mature. He's making better decisions, blah, blah, blah. So for a woman to marry him, it might actually work to her advantage, you see. But a woman at 45, then she goes through maybe a year of marriage, and, there's all this stuff going on. And then she's forced to start over. Now she's already gone through this process of, the messy divorce, the experience, this and that. Again, if you're looking at it only from a financial standpoint, it absolutely makes sense. She's crazy. She thinks that after 6 months or a year or whatever, she can just, take everything or whatever. But you have to look at her. You have to kind of consider her future or her future prospects.
But why should this man be penalized because of her anatomy and the way that she works internally? I mean,
he knew that when he married her. He knew that when he married her.
Brother.
He knew that when he married her.
So this person should take all these things in consideration for a 6 month, a 12 month, or in Jill Scott's case scenario, 18 months. Come on, this person should take responsibility for another person's anatomy, and the person themselves should not take responsibility for their own anatomy.
I'm not saying that. I think you're reducing my arguments to a ridiculous point.
But what I'm saying is, the conversation is based upon a prenup. A prenup is a financial document that speaks to finances. Okay, so if two people who are coming together don't have anything or nothing of significant value, there's no need for a prenup. everything that they accumulate, they're going to accumulate together. So if you got a 20-year-old and 21-year-old or whatever, it could be a 40-year-old and a 40-year-old. If they don't have assets, if they have more liabilities than assets, then there's no need for a prenup, right? Because whatever they're going to build, they're going to build together. So there was nothing financial of a value before they got married. But in the case scenario, I don't think that a man should be responsible for the natural makeup of a woman, and a woman should be responsible for the natural makeup of a man. It is incumbent upon each person to think about their own welfare and their own situation. So if you're a woman, then you need to plan. If you're a woman, then a woman needs to plan her life for a woman. If you're a man, then a man needs to plan his life for a man. Now,
right, but I'm talking about risk. Let's pause, JB. We're talking about risk. The reason why you're you brought up the car insurance. I think you brought up a boat, and I don't remember what else you brought up. But these were things that what you're really doing is trying to circumvent risk, right? So there's a possible risk.
How's that different in marriage, though?
Right, and that's my point, though. But what I'm saying is, when a woman enters marriage, at let's say 35 or let's say 45 or whatever, and a man enters marriage at 45, his risk that he's assessing is his money, and that's why the prenup, talks about money. And my problem with a prenup is, what about her risk? You see what I'm saying? She's also going through great risk here. So she can also, and the thing for me is, if somebody, and the thing is, again, like I think I said it before we started recording, for me, a prenup conversation would probably end the whole marriage conversation for me. Just me personally.
Right.
Right. But the thing is, let me say this. Can I finish what I was saying when I was talking about risk? If I did go ahead and do the prenup thing, I would probably ask for things that were so ridiculous that he probably changed his mind too, because I'm looking at it from protecting myself from the risk I'm about to take, just the same way he's protecting himself from the risk he's about to take.
Yeah, but I'm speaking to a holistic viewpoint that should be applicable to anyone. And I'm
talking about males versus females, because I don't subscribe to the whole thing of just trying to look at men and women exactly the same, because it's not. And I'm not saying you do, but I'm just saying that.
But even in that scenario, right? So you're talking about the difference between a male and a woman and the biological clock of this woman and so forth. Well, in our example, we have a woman, Jill Scott, who has a prenup with a male, and it's the woman who's trying to protect her rights as a prenup. And so that's the reason why I don't get into the gender specifics in regards to a prenup, because a prenup is a document. It doesn't matter whether you're male, female, doesn't matter. It's talking about the financial status of a marriage. And in our case, in many of your examples, you talked about the difference between a man and a woman. Well, in Jill Scott's case, we have a woman who has a very successful singing career, who a lot of times, if you know her story, she had to sing in nightclubs and she had to do this and pursue, So here it is, she marries a man and who did not have to experience all these different things that she did. So therefore, the fruits of her labor was a net worth that she was already had prior to getting married. And only because they've been married for 18 months, now he's trying to go into and claim a right to all of her net worth prior to marriage. Now, if we're looking at just what they accumulated in 18 months, then that would be okay in my eyes. Right. But to go back and say, okay, let's look at everything that you've accumulated prior to this husband, as well as what you've accumulated while we've been married, I don't think that makes sense.
Listen, JB, I can agree for one thing, that he shouldn't get half of everything she's accumulated until she met him. So that's not really what I'm saying. But please go on.
Yeah, and to say that, is a risk, well, that's what we're talking about, right? So in the examples, it's a risk. And if you look at our society, you cannot exclude that when you have a over 50% divorce rate in our country, that getting married is a risk, because everyone does not. It's a risk. The numbers speak for itself. So, because of my my training, I'm all about facts, right? So the facts are going to speak to themselves, and you just let it be, and we can analyze the facts. And the fact is that anytime you have something that's greater than 50%, there's a risk. There's a risk that over 50% that this might end in a divorce. You can't escape that. And if we try to not look at that, then that's where I say, well, we're more into fantasy world than reality.
I think you can agree that yes, you do have to look at the reality in front of you, the facts, and so on and so on. But I just know that if you're really like, for instance, if I talk about a different subject just for a second, I don't go for 50% for most things. I don't go for mediocre or average or whatever. And I did say at the top of the conversation that maybe the way I look at it is much different than how most people look at it. I know people who go into marriage thinking, well, if it works, it'll be great. But if it doesn't, we'll just get a divorce and move on with our lives. And again, that's probably the attitude that creates this 50% divorce rate. So I'm not disputing facts. I'm just saying that we do have to look at it differently. If you're going to say that, okay, I need a prenup, I'm talking about me and people who think like me, okay, where marriage is something that you get in and you don't get out. Of course, there's extreme and very, very unique circumstances that could bring the conversation back to the table. But I'm talking about in general, right? So a prenup for me is something that I don't want to have to talk about. But if we go back to just being mediocre, average people and go in thinking, well, it might work or might not work, yeah, go ahead and get your prenup, because it probably, will come up eventually, right? So I'm trying to agree with you to some degree and still stand by what I'm saying. Now, when we go back to Jill Scott, yeah, this is even more different because she's the woman, right? And he's the man. So I'll tell you, I did commentary on this yesterday from a social perspective and not a financial one. And one of the things that I said was, just based on what I'm seeing, and it wasn't that much, I actually don't even think they should get married. They should have gotten married to begin with. I don't even know if they know why they got married. It may have been one of those stupid things where they, told themselves they fell in love and wanted to be together forever, like high school. But other than that, I didn't see why they got married in the first place. I didn't know what the value was that he was bringing into her life. Based on what he was saying, there was none. And then based on what she was saying about him, there was none.
Okay, but woulda, coulda, shoulda. In hindsight is always 2020. But let's look at the situation. So, okay, they did get married, and I'm a financial person, right? So what things could have happened, even though a prenup was in place, even though they still got married? How could this guy, which I don't know who he is, how could he have secured his financial future, protecting himself from risk, right? So number one, you married a multimillionaire. I'm assuming that Jill Scott is a multimillionaire, and in most relationships, whenever a person's birthday or Christmas or holiday roll around, they like to get them very expensive gifts. Whether it's a new Bentley or a new Rolls Royce or something of that case, right? So this guy could have said, you know what, honey pie, sugar cakes, instead of buying me this, $400,000, $500,000 car, or spending this lavish $300,000 on me, whatever, how about you just give me $100,000 as seed money, so therefore I can begin to purchase assets for me. You've already financially secure, and you brought a lot to the table, and you have a prenup, and I love you and all that, but there's no need of wasting purchasing a liability on my half to enjoy only for it to depreciate. Let me get $100,000, and that gives me ability to go out and maybe buy some real estate, start my own business, buy some stock, buy some commodities, maybe hold some paper assets. It gives me the ability to be able to at least have something for myself and build something for myself of an asset. You know, we can both benefit from it, right? But you're doing your own thing, and so therefore, let me have something that I can claim as my own, or feel happy that I'm making a difference, right? But
Doesn't
in
that
most
sound more
cases,
like a gold digger?
no. If someone has the ideal of spending $500,000 on you for a Bentley or a Rolls Royce, and you say instead of spending $500,000 on a car, you know, just give it to me as a gift, or purchase me a piece of. I'd rather enjoy it with a piece of real estate that I can rent out, where instead of me driving around in a $500,000 car, you know, take $300,000 and just purchase me a piece of real estate so that I can start my own business. What's the difference in someone giving you a $500,000 car, or someone saying, okay, instead of giving you $500,000 a car, I'm gonna give you some money to help start your own business? I don't see where that's a gold digger, especially when a person already had the mindset to spend this kind of money on you for your birthday as a gift, or for Christmas as a gift, or as a gift for anniversary. So this person is not asking for it just on their own accord. You're looking for something to give them as a gift.
Okay. Okay, I can go along with that. But to me, I think if somebody said that they wanted cash, and again, the thing is, I don't throw around that term gold diggers, but people who do, that's something they might say, like, oh wow, so now she wants or he wants cold hard cash, you know.
Or instead of buying a car for a gift, you know, like my children, you know, I don't buy my children gifts, you know, for Christmas. I buy them stock.
Right.
So it's no different than if a person who loves you saying, you know, especially if you have this conversation with them, hey, I'm not really into, you know, liabilities or a lot of different things that's not going to bring any value in the future. You know, instead of buying me the car, you can have your own choice. You know, you either can help me start a business, you can buy me some stock, you can buy me a piece of property, but I'm letting you know what type of gifts, if you're going to buy a gift, that I would appreciate over a new mink coat or a diamond ring or some jewelry or a car, you know, or a trip to Morocco to go gambling, you know.
Okay.
So, I mean, to me, that's more of a responsible financial conversation that someone who doesn't have a prenup in their favor might have. And let me also interject this. People who have a prenup, who is usually not the person who initiates the prenup who has a problem with it. It's the person who are bringing less to the table who have an issue with prenups.
Financially.
The rich person financially, right? So if someone is financially stable on their own without someone else, they have no issue with whether or not they have a prenup or not.
Right.
It's only the person, is usually 9 times out of 10, only the person who has less to gain out of a divorce who will have an issue with a prenup.
But that was one of my points. That was one of my points. I was speaking
Right.
I was speaking specifically as a woman, because I'm talking about I mean, and I know, you know, in this day and age, not everybody has a traditional setup. But if you choose a traditional setup, then yeah, financially, the person who chooses to take care of the home is set up to lose financially, unless, again, they make extravagant demands on that prenup.
Yeah, but the prenup has clauses for that. And like I
And
said,
I
you know,
understand.
if a person says, hey, we agree together to have a traditional home, then, I mean, you can not only does a prenup has a clause that they look at what income have you generated together, you can also write an amendment or an addition to that clause to say, hey, you know, I'm willing to give a person $5 million if we separate. So it doesn't prohibit a person who wants to put in there, hey, I'm worth $50 million. I'm not willing to split $50 million with you, but I'm willing to give you $5 million no matter how long we've been married. Or they might say, as long as we married 5 years or more, I'm willing to give you $5 million, or whatever the case might be. You know, and with a prenup, it's able, see, in a relationship, in a marriage relationship, if a person is more financially wealthy than the other, when an argument happens, then a lot of time what's in the air is that this person only loved you because of what you can do for them. Whether it's true or not, that environment is still present.
Right.
Now, if a wealthy person presents the other person with a prenup and the other person willingly signs it, then in the time of an argument or a hard time, which every marriage goes through, there is no doubt that this person married you for you and not what you can do for them, because they letting you know from the beginning, I don't care about your money and I don't want your money. So it actually gives a better sense of environment to say, hey, we're in it because we love each other, not because of financial gain one can do for the other.
But I think,
so to me,
I think the whole love
marriage
conversation is also, I think that's a stupid conversation too. Not that what you're saying is stupid.
Yeah,
I just don't like the idea of being together just for love. I don't agree with that either.
But you got to also recognize, Noma, that you are an extreme minority in the case of our society. So when I'm speaking, even though I'm not interjecting my personal views, other than the fact that I do support a prenup, if I'm thinking about the masses across the United States, most people are not going to have your theory, your principle,
right? But they should.
Belief.
Otherwise, the marriage rate wouldn't be failing 50% of the time.
No, see, I can't say that they should or should not, because that's a personal choice.
No. I don't want to sound, JB, let me stop. I don't want to sound arrogant and say that everybody should think like me. And if they don't think like me, then that's why they're failing in marriage. But I'm just saying, specifically talking about that whole love thing, which means that they're not walking into a lifelong arrangement sober. That's what I'm speaking to.
Right. So I can so with me, as from again analysis and looking at research, what I prescribe to is saying, okay, here are the facts, right? So if I lay this out in this type of environment, here are the outcomes that tend to happen, right? So you can say, well, based upon this belief, you might have the outcome says that these marriages last longer, they're more successful based upon X, Y, and Z. And then you can say, well, based upon these choices or this belief, the outcomes are 50% or greater divorce, messy divorces, money issues, X, Y, and Z. And so now by presenting all cases or all schools of thoughts, you can say, now here are choices, and here are the outcomes based upon those choices according to statistics. Now make your own decision what's best for you or what you want to do.
Okay.
You follow me?
I am following you, but the thing is, why would anybody make a decision that works against them?
I mean, people do it all the time.
That's because they don't have the statistics in front of them.
Well, that's not necessarily the case. I mean, how many statistics do we see on TV, in print, in magazines, and marketing that smoking cigarettes cause cancer? But people still make the conscious decision to go buy a pack a day.
Well, those are people who are already addicted.
Yeah, but you got to understand, people are addicted to different things. People are addicted to life. People are addicted to adrenaline. People are addicted to not being alone. So just because a person might have facts in front of them to say, well, they won't make those decisions, they have the facts, I can point to too many cases where people still would make that choice, even though they know that outcome, 99.9%, is going to lead to a demise or something that's not beneficial or enjoyable.
Okay, I understand what you're saying.
Right.
I understand what you're saying. So if I was looking at you as a personal finance expert, which you are, and you presented some things, which you do when we do lots of when you basically instruct, right? And I moderate. Yeah. You talk about, okay, this is what you should do. This is what will create this outcome, so on and so on and so on. You're not arguing about the outcome, because the outcome has stood the test of time. We've seen it over and over and over, so we know that that's what's going to happen. So you're not telling people this is what you should or shouldn't do. I'm just telling you that if you do this, this is the result. I'm telling you if you do this, this is the result. If you do this, this is the result. So we're agreeing on that part. And I'm saying the same thing here, although not as emphatically, is that, yeah, there is something wrong. And I know we've gone way, way, way off topic, but yeah, I am saying that, yes, you're saying, well, Norma, you're unique, but I'm still saying, you kind of talked about statistics, but actually the arranged marriages across the globe are the ones that work the most. And that's because they don't go gaga, I'm in love, and then stumble into it. They make some very, very sober decisions. Their parents are involved. They look at the families. They look at the generational patterns. They look at, they have negotiations. They do all these things to ensure the best outcome. And I bet you they don't have prenups, because they're on equal footing when they come into the marriage. And even if they
absolutely.
do, right.
So that's a very valid point, right?
Right.
So in an arranged marriage, which I do agree, because I have seen statistics that arranged marriages last longer than people who find spouses of their own. But in an arranged marriage, the reason why there's no need for a prenup is because a person of means who comes from a family of means, that family is not going to choose a spouse for that person that comes maybe from poverty or from a peasant. It's just not going to happen. They're going to look at they're going to look at the financials. They're going to look at the spiritual. They're going to look at the belief. They're going to even look at the genetics to see what type of DNA, right?
Thank you. You're expanding the conversation the way that I wanted to expand it in the first place.
Wait. Let me finish, though.
Mm-hmm.
But I can't say that, because this is true, right? Which it is. The facts speak to that.
Mm-hmm.
If a person is not from that, if they don't have an arranged marriage, if they don't have family members looking out for the best choices, and if they do not arbitrarily are in a society where that is the majority of the way that marriages occur or happen,
mm-hmm.
then prenup is the offset or the insurance to not having that. Therefore, that's why I am a strong proponent of prenup. Now, if you got two family members who get along, who come together and they begin to look at the union, how it's going to benefit both parties financially, spiritually, holistically,
mm-hmm.
DNA, the whole 9 yards, then the prenup is mute.
Right.
But in the United States, that is not how the majority of marriages occur. So in reality, and looking at where we are at right now today, in a place and time as a society, prenup is the best alternative to a prearranged or arranged marriages by families.
Okay, I'll give you that part, although I wouldn't say it's the best alternative. I think that we don't have to necessarily go to arranged marriages and stuff like that. And I don't mind sharing that in my culture, I was born and raised in Botswana. We still honor the negotiation process leading up to marriage. You're caused as a person who's about to get married to investigate your reasons for getting into it, and questioned, and I might even say interrogated. Okay, both of you are put through that process. So I think what I'm really pushing back against is the idea that money has to govern everything. And I like the fact that you brought in, the spiritual component, even genetics. And the thing is, I personally haven't been at a negotiation where genetics were discussed. But, if you come from a smaller country like I do, families know each other, and some people might not say it, but they'll be thinking it, that, well, she's coming from that family and they have, something wrong over there. So the value that she's bringing here is diminished if we're talking just specifically about genetics. But the other thing is they have a great reputation of being honest or whatever it is, so that is an increase in the value. He, on the other hand, their family, they have a lot of scandals, but at the same time, he's overcome that. He's built a nice business or wealth or whatever. So really, again, I'm bringing it back, and I know you're a finance person, so you have to stay true to that, but I'm not. So I don't have to jump on the bandwagon of looking at things through only a financial lens. I have to look at it holistically, and I'd even take it further and say I'm a huge advocate of marriage. So again, those are the things that kind of trigger me when people reduce it to money, because it means so so much more. And I'm not saying you're reducing it to that, because you yourself are married and, you know, have a family and so forth, so you value family. But I think that's what that's the point that, you know, it took us about an hour to make, but that's kind of the point where I don't want it to just be a financial conversation. It has to be about more. And actually, you've educated me a little bit in saying how prenups actually vary, you know, and they can include so much more. I've heard of prenups. Again, I don't have one. My parents don't have one. In fact, I don't think I know anybody that has one. And it's not because I don't know people who've accumulated wealth and have millions and what have you. They just don't have prenups. And those families have, again, been going for generations, so the prenup is never even an issue. So yeah, I think
but I also encourage all of our listeners to look at it from a different point of view. So instead of looking at as a prenup being a financial instrument, which it is, diminishing a relationship, you could also look at a prenup enabling a relationship to grow, right? So if we only look at it as this prenup is now as a negative tool in regards to marriages, then that can become problematic. But if we flip it on its head, if we flip that idea on its head and say, okay, yes, prenup is a financial tool, but now it's going to remove finances from our relationship, which is going to allow the spirituality, the wholeness, and all these other intangible things, the ability to grow even more. So if we look at now, this is a flower, and we've given it more sunlight, more attention, because now the attention is not on finances. Once that prenup is in place, then finances should actually be removed from the equation. And
but
if finances is removed from the what? Let me finish this out. But let me just hear me out. It's part of it if you want to keep reintroducing it into the equation. But for a couple that says, okay, we've already dealt with the finances, so therefore we're going to remove it from the equation because it's already dealt with. Now let's deal with the other aspects of marriage. It actually enables those other aspects to grow unencumbered. So it's all based upon a person's mentality and how they want to view it. You know, someone asked me years ago, do I see a glass half empty or half full, right?
Right.
And that's kind of the same thing, right? So are you looking at this as being negative, or is someone else looking at it as being positive? And it's all based upon perspective. My response to that, if someone wants to know whether I look at something as half empty or half full, I told them it doesn't matter. I bring my own pitcher to the glass. So I'm walking around with a pitcher. So again, where one person was looking at A or B perspective, I introduced a C to it, right? And that's the same thing that can happen with a prenup. So a prenup doesn't have to be negative. It doesn't have to be this dark cloud over a marriage. It actually can be a situation where we say, okay, hey, we remove that scenario from the equation, and now we've given other avenues to be able to bloom. No difference if a couple made the decision together prior to being married, hey, neither one of us want children. And so now children is not even part of the equation, and now they can concentrate on so many more things, right? Because I'm married with children, and I can tell you, children take up a huge percentage of everything that happens in our household, right? So for a couple who decides, hey, we're not going to have children, now they have a horizon that everyone else who have children might not have at that time, as long as their children are still in the house.
Right. And also, they should also follow through and make sure they don't have children. Right.
And you know, but I'm talking, me personally, to the majority of individuals who's going to listen to this podcast. The majority of the people who are going to listen to this are in the United States, and the majority of the people who are listening to this are not going to have the opportunity for prearranged marriages. And the majority of the people that are listening to this are going to find themselves in this situation where they went out and pursued their spouse, and you know, and now, because we live in a society that we leverage or hedge risk based upon insurance, this is no different than insurance that's hedged upon the risk of getting married in a society where divorce is greater than 50%.
Right, and thank you so much for stating that, because I generally don't speak to, the general population. I have more of a niche, and
Right.
I speak more to people who value marriage the same way that I do. I speak more to women who are married already and who do have children, and they're invested in building generational wealth and building generational success. Um, there was a sound there. Hello? Okay.
Yeah, I'm,
Looks.
I'm still here. That was my vehicle. Sorry.
Okay, no problem. I thought we had lost you, but anyway, yeah. So I think I'm glad that you brought that up, because I did, like I said, invite you into the conversation because I really wanted to know what you thought. But I also want to offer another perspective, and say that I'm talking, to people who really are more like me. Not to say that people who are not like me, don't matter, but that's just my um, that's what I do. I talk to people who are interested in going the same way that I'm going, doing the same things that I'm doing, and that's ultimately building generational wealth and building generational success. And I believe that I'm also talking to people um, who are not going for the status quo of maybe it'll work, maybe it won't, and if it does, this is what I'm gonna do, and if it doesn't, this is what I'm gonna do. So maybe that's the major difference, that or the distinction that we may have made at the top of the conversation. But I would agree that thank you for causing me to see things from a different perspective, which is ultimately what I wanted to do. And I think that our audience will also benefit from that.
Well, absolutely. It's always a pleasure to speak with you and to speak with others who have different schools of thought.
Right.
And that's what transformative learning is about, right?
Right.
You hear something that challenges your perspective and outlook on something, and so now either your perspective becomes stronger because now you can articulate and clarify your reasons for being that,
Right.
or you say, wait a minute, this person has a very good point. Let me try to look at it through their lenses or through a different set of lenses that does not have the biases and prejudices that all of us bring to the table based upon how we were raised, where we come from, and what we've been introduced or exposed to.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. So again, I just want to make sure everybody knows where to find you. We're having a great conversation about a very general topic, but you are a personal finance expert, and we've done a lot of segments where you're again instructing and I'm moderating. Some great conversations about how to build wealth, overcome debt, investing, buying homes, what to do before you get married, what to do before you have children, what to do before you buy a home, all of this through how to manage your finances through all these processes. And in front of me, I have, the article of Jill Scott, but also our audience can go to the Life After Debt Institute, which is at teachable.com. So if you go to teachable.com, just look for the Life After Debt Institute, and we have a great series there called Ask Dr. Beckem, and you answer a myriad of personal finance questions. And I'm always joking. This is the first time that I've actually gone against you and said, no, I don't think so. No, I don't think so. Usually I'm a student who I always joke has a front row seat when you're instructing. So I encourage others to, to get in the class. It's free. Ask Dr. Beckem. Feel free to send him questions. You can find him on Facebook at Dr. John Beckem, and you can also follow him on Twitter and also on YouTube, all the same, Dr. John Beckem. And again, feel free to stop by, ask a question, and it will be answered, and it'll be one of these segments. So again, thank you. And also, the disclaimer is my relationship with Dr. Beckem pre-exists this conversation and will exist after this conversation because we're related.
Absolutely.
So no matter how heated, and it didn't get that heated, but no matter how heated this conversation got, we were going to put this behind us and move on with a great relationship. But thank you, JB. I really do appreciate this conversation. It was a great conversation.
All right, you too. Have a good one.
You too. So let me stop sharing here. Thank you, everybody, and we'll see you next time.